talk of this session is going to be given by Mahsa Moosavi. Hope I didn't butcher your name as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And she will be talking to us about fast and furious withdrawals from optimistic rollups.
All right, thank you. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the session. As Pedro, right? Okay, Pedro said, I'll be talking about how you can kind of skip the dispute periods on optimistic rollups. And this is a joint work with my PhD advisor, Jeremy Clark at Concordia University in Montreal, and two of my OffchainLabs colleagues, because I'm also doing PhD and I'm also an integration engineer at the OffchainLabs. All right, so before we jump into the research problem that we want to try to solve in this research, I want to take some time and talk about what is the problem that optimistic rollups are trying to solve. And that problem, you can basically really narrow it down to a basic comparison between how cloud computing works and how blockchain network works. So on a cloud, when let's say you have a transaction that you want to get it executed, what you do is you send it to the node in the network, and then that single node would execute the function for you, and then it sends you the result back. In contrast, the way it works on a blockchain is you send your transaction to a node, and then that node would relay it to every node on the network, and then every single node on the network has to execute the function for you, and then they run some consensus algorithm among each other through which they can agree on the same output, and it's only at that point that you can hear about the output. So you can really see the scalability issue that I'll be talking about here. And that is the reason why blockchains are slow and they're expensive. And there has been a lot of scalability solutions that were introduced during the past few years. And this is a really tough problem, by the way, to solve, no matter what solution you're thinking about. But in this talk, I want to focus on optimistic rollup because obviously I'll be working on Arbitrum on this research. So the way optimistic rollups try to address this scalability issue of blockchain is you would send, let's say again, you have that function that you want to have it executed. The way it works is you would send it to the node on the network, and then that node would execute the function for you locally. And instead of then relying it to the network and the way it works on a normal blockchain, what it does is it puts some money on the output. And it would say, I'm staking money on this output. I certify that this is the correct output. If any other node, if you think that this is not the right output, you're very welcome, step forward and dispute it. And if you can win the dispute, then my money is gone, you can get my money. So what the rest of the network, the nodes in the network do is they just record the output. They don't recompute anything at all. They just record the output, and then they sit on it for a little while. I'll be talking about that. This is called the dispute period. And then during this period, this output is open for disputes. Anyone is welcome to come along and dispute it. But if there's no dispute, then the network can say this is the final output. This is finalized. So Arbitrum is an optimistic rollup that was introduced as an academic paper in Princeton by a group of colleagues in 2018 in a Usenix conference, and now it's one of the most successful L2s by a lot of metrics, including total value locked, and recently in February it had more transactions on a single day than Ethereum does. So let's see how Arbitrum works, because we need that for the sake of the research. I'll be very brief though, so if you have any questions, try to ask me at the end. So for the chain to operate, we need to put some contracts on L1, on Ethereum L1. So we have two smart contracts, inbox and outbox, that are responsible for executing the transactions that are sent to the Arbitrum chain. And we also have the bridge smart contract, which is basically managing all of the transfers of assets to the chain, depositing and withdrawals. And in this research work, what we do is we change the code base of the outbox and bridge, and we don't touch the inbox at all. So let's say you have a transaction that you want to have it executed on Arbitrum. The way it works is you will send your transaction to the sequencer, and then the sequencer put that on the inbox smart contract. So from your perspective, Sequencer is nothing but a web service. So it doesn't introduce any extra costs in the transaction for you, and you just tell your transaction over a web. But from the sequencer's perspective, what it does is it basically orders the transaction and it bundles them, a bunch of them in a block. It kind of compresses the transaction. So it kind of reduces the overhead cost of submitting the transaction to the inbox for you. So, okay, the sequencer will send the transactions to the inbox. And what the inbox smart contract does, it just records the transaction. It doesn't execute anything at all. It just records the call data and the inputs of that transaction. So your transaction is now sitting inside the inbox smart contract. And we have some nodes, we call them validators. And these validators are, by the way, different concept than Ethereum validators. They're just nodes that are constantly monitoring the inbox smart contract for the incoming transactions. So they see that there's some transactions sitting inside the inbox and are waiting to be executed. And what they do is they take them off chain, they execute them locally off chain, and then they update everybody's account on the Arbitrum land based on the result of the transaction. And every now and then, now it's 30 minutes on Arbitrum, if I'm not mistaken, they push back the result in what we call an R block back to L1, to the outbox smart contract. So the result would sit inside the outbox for 7 days. This is the dispute period I was talking about. And it's there, you have to be waiting for 7 days for the transaction to be finalized. And during this period, anybody, again, is welcome. If the validation is open and it's not whitelisted, then everybody is welcome to come along and dispute the output. And then after 7 days, if there's no dispute, you can say the transaction is final. The output is final. The R block, is final. All right, so let's see how deposits and withdrawals work. So let's say you want to deposit 10 Ether to Arbitrum. Again, you will send it to the inbox. There's a small difference here. We have some Arbitrum-specific transaction for depositing and withdrawal of Ether. So you will call the deposit ETH function of the inbox smart contract. And then what happens is 10 Ether on L1 gets screwed on the bridge smart contract for you under your account. And then validators, when they want to execute your transaction, what they do is they basically mint 10 Ether out of thin air, and they sign this 10 Ether to you, to your account address on Arbitrum chain. And let's say you want to withdraw it now. Again, you will call the withdraw Ether from the inbox smart contract. Validators, they do their job. And in order to do that, first, they have to check whether you really have that amount of Ether on L2 that you can withdraw. And if yes, they basically burn that Ether for you on Arbitrum. And then they push back the result in an R block to outbox. So we have to wait for 7 days, and if 7 days is passed and no one has disputed the output, we can say it's final. So only in that point, you can walk up to the outbox, you provide your exit withdrawal to the outbox and say, hey, this is my withdrawal. It's sitting in this R block that is just finalized. You can go check. And if you're happy, please give me my Ether back. And the outbox would check everything for you. And if yes, it got the green light, it would call the bridge, and then it's only that point that bridge would release the Ether for you, so you can get your ETH back. So you can see the problem here, right? So the problem here is if you want to use the bridge that is like the protocol itself, not any third-party bridges, you have to be waiting for 7 days in order to get your ETH out of Arbitrum chain. And this is not really what people like. And sometimes you may have some pressing reasons. You really need your ETH on L1. Sometimes you just don't want to wait. And this could be even longer if there's any dispute. So disputes have the potential to extend the dispute period if there's any. Although there's never been a dispute so far in the whole history of Arbitrum chain. So the main question that you may ask is, I just sent a transaction. Will it be finalized or not? And this is really interesting because if you send your transaction on L1 Ethereum, you can see that the transaction is sitting inside the mempool. So it's really 50-50. It's maybe, maybe not, because it really depends on a lot of factors. If it's picked up by a miner, running censorship, and whole lots of things. So yeah, the transaction is in the mempool, but the fact that it's really gonna get on chain, is landing on chain, is questionable. But if you see your transaction, your withdrawal in an R block, if there's any way you can somehow tell if this R block is going to be finalized or not, then you can be 100% sure that this transaction is indeed going to be finalized. So we call this property an eventual finality. And this is really an important property for our research, because it turned out that, let's say you withdraw some amount of ETH, if you run an Arbitrum validator, you can be 100% sure that this ETH is gonna pop out of the breach after 7 days. And the reason for that is every transaction is already recorded inside the inbox smart contract. So at any point, anyone can walk up to the inbox and they can start running the transactions from top to bottom in the same order, and they should get the latest state of the Arbitrum chain. All right, so using the eventual property, our research question is, can we propose some methods for Alice to be able to withdraw 10 Ether from Arbitrum in less than 7 days? So the first method that comes to our mind is to use a centralized exchange. So Alice can use a centralized exchange. Let's say like Binance, it has some pile of ETH on L2, some on L1, and Alice can basically do the trade. So the biggest problem with that is that it's centralized. And the second solution could be, let's say Alice can find someone like Bob who is sitting on a pile of ETH on L1 and is willing to trade that with Alice, who has ETH on L2 and want to get it out. And let's imagine that there are some atomic swap protocol that they work cross-chain. So this is good, they can trade. The problem with that would be the problem with atomic swaps, that one of the parties, they have this window that they can abort. So Bob could agree on doing the trade, but he can abort. Although Alice can get her money back, it's not really what she wants. Like she's not getting her L1 first on ETH on L1, and yeah, she can do the trade. The third solution that we came up with is, let's say Alice already initiated her withdrawal from L2. So what we can do is we can tweak Outbox to issue Alice a ticket that is redeemable for 10 ETH on L1. Obviously, when that like dispute period passed, the ticket can be redeemable. And there could be somebody like Bob who's willing to trade his ETH with that ticket from Alice. So this is fine, it works. The only problem with that is Bob needs to be 100% sure that this ticket is valid. Like it's basically the R block, right? So he needs to be sure, he needs some insurance to be sure that this Ether is gonna come out of the breach after 7 days. So not everybody is Arbitrum validator. So the problem with this approach is Bob is scarce. So the last solution that we came up with was, what if we can provide some insurance policy for Bob so that he doesn't have to be an Arbitrum validator, but somehow he can know if the block is valid or not, or he can get some insurance. So yeah, we can do that. So what we do is we provide this insurance policy and we say, it doesn't matter if you're Arbitrum validator or not. You don't even care about Arbitrum, that's fine. What we do is we give you this insurance policy. So if the R block finalizes after 7 days, you can get your ETH back by redeeming the ticket after 7 days. And if not, if the R block is failed, what you do is you can have this insurance policy that would pay you. So you're covered on any case. And the way we do that is by setting up a prediction market, which is basically a betting market, but with the difference that you can get in and out of your position. You can buy and sell them. This you cannot do in a normal betting market, right? So the way it works is traders would submit 10 Ether inside this prediction market smart contract. We would set it up, and this is really like a vending machine. Because there are ways to set up a prediction market. This is the simplest one, really. So it's like a vending machine. Trader would put 10 Ether inside the prediction market, and they would get two kind of tokens, 10 final tokens and 10 fail tokens. So if the R block is finalized, that final tokens are redeemable for 10 ETH. And on the other side, if the R block is not finalized and it's failed, the 10 failed tokens are going to worth 10 Ether, sorry. And in both cases, the other token would worth 0, obviously. So these shares, they can be sold and bought separately in different markets. And what can happen is Alice can buy one of these failed tokens. And by the way, these failed tokens are traded at a very low price. It's like close to a cent or something. Then she can go to Bob on a separate market, and she said, you can buy my ticket for some price. I put the star here because it's now really 10 ETH. We have another slide for how we price these tickets. And then she would give out this 10 fail tokens as an insurance to Bob. So if at the end of the day, after the dispute period, the R block does not finalize, what happens is Bob can go to the market and then redeem his 10 ETH back by putting back these failed tokens. And the biggest problem with this prediction market normally is like you would need an oracle on L1 to tell you the results, but here is not really that case because our block is on L1, and we should basically just expose the fact that if it's finalized or not, which we did. We add a function to the outbox smart contract, which tells you if the R block has been finalized or not to make it prediction market friendly. And the last research question that we had was how would we price these tickets? Because the 10 Ether that you're going to get in 7 days is not really the same as 10 Ether that you're going to pay now, right? So the ticket should worth less. Like there should be discount or bonus. So our observation was like this really works like a futures contract. So maybe we can look at how futures contracts pricing works. And then we can at least grab some variables from that pricing and we apply them here. By the way, the only difference that this may have with a futures contract is that when, let's say, you want to buy corn or oil in 5 days, you only pay for that in 5 days. So you have the futures contract, it's worth 0 at the beginning. So depending on how prices fluctuate, it can gain value or it can lose. But the fact that like you pay for it is in 5 days, sorry. But here you would pay for the ticket now and you'll get your ticket in the future. So this is something we have to consider. So there are some variables that affect the pricing of the ticket. The first one is obviously the spot price of Ether right now. How much is Ether worth? The second one is time. The closer we get to the expiration of this dispute period, the closer we get to the end of 7 days, obviously the price of the ticket and Ether1 should converge. And then, storage cost. So storage cost, of course, is a very big thing for futures. Because let's say you want to get oil in 10 days. It really matters who's going to store this oil for you in the meantime. Is it the buyer or the seller? Who's going to pay for that? But it turned out, because we thought about it, and it turned out that it's not really a thing here for this, because storing the Ether itself with a token that is going to be redeemable for Ether, it doesn't matter. Like the storage cost wouldn't be different. But yield and interest is a factor here because there are some DeFi protocols right now, like Compound, that would allow you to get some interest on the ETH. So instead of holding your ETH and getting interest, you're just locking it up. So there should be some discounts or something for you that you're buying for that. And then the exchange rate is not really a thing here because it's basically the same token. You're getting ETH, you're buying ETH, and you're getting ETH. And the delivery cost, in futures, it's a big thing because let's say you want to get oil, who's going to deliver that for you? It's costly, right? Who's going to pay for that? And unlike the storage cost, this is really a thing on pricing of the tickets as well. Because let's say you're holding the ticket, then you have to go back to the market and you have to put it back to the market and you have to redeem it. So these are all costing some gas for you. So who's going to pay for that? Is it you or is it the seller? And so there should be some discounts as well. And then at the end, there's some settlement risk of basically Arbitrum failing. So what is the probability of that this R block never finalizes and it basically fails? So for the sake of implementation, we did implement this. We forked the Arbitrum Nitro. As I said, we modified Outbox and Bridge smart contracts. Then we tried to track the ownership of these exits inside the outbox, and we also enabled the transfer. We ran some tests to get some numbers to make sure we don't exceed the block gas limits, and etc. And for, let's say, for transfers of these exits in the market, it would cost around 40K in L1 gas unit, and the first one would cost a lot more, 85, because in the first one you're actually creating the mapping inside a smart contract. And for executing the exit, meaning the transferring and everything, the getting the money out of the bridge, it would cost you around 91 L1 gas, 91K L1 gas. And in the outbox, as I said, we also exposed the R block status to make it prediction market friendly. We haven't yet implemented the prediction market. We just made the outbox and bridge to be PM friendly, but I haven't still figured that out, but I might want to hook it into Gnosis or Augur. And yeah, and there's also a bunch of engineering details that are on me there. You can see the code here, and also reach out to me if you have any other questions.
Thanks for the talk. We're a bit over time, but we have maybe one quick question.
I just want to point out something, and I'm just a little confused about at least the flow of the presentation. For much of the front part of the presentation, especially when you were presenting solution number 3, you mentioned that a validator on the Arbitrum network would be able to see if an R block is valid and therefore carries no risk.
Right.
And later on, I think there was a hint that that's not quite correct. I believe it's not quite correct. I believe that the risk here is that a validator on the network will instantaneously in real time think that the R block is valid.
Yeah, that's right.
But later on, it will be revealed that the R block, there was a problem. Like the one that happened on Bitcoin when the database was corrupt. Everybody, every single node thought that there was a problem, and Bitcoin had to revert many blocks and restart again. And that can happen here as well. So that solution, or the problem with that solution, isn't so much that Bob is scarce, but that R blocks may not finalize at all, that there is a real risk of Arbitrum failing there.
That's right. Yeah, you're totally right. And yeah, there could be reorgs as well. That, yeah, the probability of that, I'd say, is really low. That's why we never consider it, but you have the point, right? We have to add it to the paper as well. Thanks.
Okay, so let's thank the speaker again.